Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's The Business Program. I'm Jenelle Riley, Deputy Awards and Features Editor at Variety. Before we welcome our guests, I want to let you know that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the foundation has given over $7 million in COVID relief to more than 7,500 performers. So if you are a SAG-AFTRA artist and you need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Ana Gasteyer and Justin Spitzer. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Justin, you're the creator of American Auto, starring Anna, along with a wonderful ensemble cast. Before we get into that, I actually want to start off by asking both of you about your first job in the business, the first time you felt you could call yourself a writer or call yourself an actor, whether you were paid for it or not.
Ooh, do you want to go first, Justin?
The first time, well, I actually got very lucky early on. I had a Scrubs episode while I was still a writer's assistant, and I'd written it on spec, and Bill Lawrence at Scrubs had gotten a hold of it, and they agreed to sort of produce it and let me come in as sort of like a fan really of the show and sit in the writer's room and re-break it with them and write it and be on set. So it was sort of it was a really thrilling time. I still remember it, getting to go and feel like a professional writer and then run back and forth to being like my assistant job. And it was very weird feeling changes. But yeah, that was the first time I was like, oh, okay, maybe there's a light at the end of this tunnel.
And Ana, for you?
I would say well, I mean, it's funny. It's like I always say to young actors or performers in school, like you kind of have to pick your own positive signpost. And it was a moment I remember after I graduated from college and I had moved out to Los Angeles and I was working as a PA at an animation company. And a friend from college actually worked in voiceover and brought me into, worked at a voiceover agency and had me audition for a bunch of voiceovers just to be helpful. And I actually booked a Wiener Schnitzel radio commercial. It was like a regional Wiener Schnitzel radio spot, which I think paid about $5, but it was an actual after job. And I remember like that from that moment forward, I was like, oh, I can just now when I go to parties, like when my parents' friends say, what do you do? Instead of saying I'm a temp PA at an animation company, I can say, oh, I'm an actor. And it really did sort of define a moment where I started calling myself the thing, even if I only made, $50, that was what I counted myself as in the world.
And I mean, Wiener Schnitzel is a product I believe in, so.
Absolutely, and it's still going strong. So I've always believed in getting behind a brand, and that's why I also have gone on to do IKEA and Pampers commercials.
I'm not into Pampers yet, but I'm a big IKEA person. I was just there yesterday, so.
Yeah, I'm on my way, actually. When we're done with this, I'm going to buy some gardening supplies.
You say you're such a good actor. I actually believe you. I don't know if you're kidding, but I see you're kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, working in the entertainment industry, it can be so rewarding, especially when you have careers like the two of you. But it can also be incredibly challenging. Was there ever a time either of you considered doing anything else, or did you sort of know this is what you had to do?
You have a good answer. You go first, please.
I mean, I definitely think there are pockets, especially I think for performers in a really obvious way. There are age valleys that you hit, so you might age into being a young mom and then age out of it and sort of be too young to be an old mom and too old to be a young mom or whatever. Like there are phases that you go through, but also I think there are creative, peaks and valleys where you start to feel like, oh my God, I'm so sick of my own shtick, or I am never going to work again, or this other person, every established actor I feel has that story where they tell the story of seeing their own name in the breakdown, like you're the so-and-so type and you're like, but I can't get the job, but it's an Ana Gasteyer type, that moment. But I feel very fortunate because I came to it to begin with as a writer-performer via sketch comedy. And so in those moments, I've been able to dig down and reinvent. And so either create things or try to make stuff, make albums or make shows or make 'em ups. Justin and I both went to Northwestern, which is a big make 'em up kind of a college, and I'm really grateful to that program for sort of encouraging that idea that if you get stuck, don't sit around waiting for someone to cast you. Start making some phone calls and go out there and make something. And it, at the very least, has shaken me free of the limitation placed upon me by the outside construct of being cast, if that makes any sense. Even if I don't make money at it, it gets me moving again.
Yeah.
And again, back to my original point, it gives you the thing to say at the party. Like, hey, what are you working on? You're like, well, I'm writing a one-woman show. Nobody has to know that nobody's paying you for it. But, it's a helpful way to look at it.
Did you know each other at Northwestern?
No, I'm old.
I graduated, I think last June, actually. So
Justin just graduated. He just graduated.
Doing very well, but it ages you.
The Scrubs gig was how we got into college.
That's how, I was just sperm at the time. No, and when I came out, it was similar. I kind of wanted to do something in entertainment. I figured, and at first I was quasi trying to be an actor a little bit in Chicago and New York, and I wasn't very good. I was certainly below average, and I think that's part of it too. But I had the experience too of like going to when I could get an audition and seeing a bunch of other people that were my type, and it was sort of like I kind of quickly realized like I don't even know how you get to where you want to get in this, but I can be writing at the same time, and just like Anna, I did writing and performing in college. And started writing specs and liked that. And it's not like writing is easy at all. And I definitely had the experience of coming out to LA and not even it's one thing if someone reads you and passes you for a job, but it's even more frustrating when you can't even get read and you're like, well, I don't even know where to begin with this. And we all have that experience. Eventually you get in, but I definitely had a lot of that doubt and depression of just like, where does this go? Am I going to be, 50 and exactly in the same apartment I am in West Hollywood?
How did you get read? I mean, I imagine it wasn't one thing. It was probably a series of breaks or opportunities, but, were there people who sort of gave you a leg up?
Yeah, I feel like everyone has those sort of like, there's not one defined way, but like you know enough people and you work hard and you find little ways. I mean, for me, and also, knowing people, my wife also went to Northwestern. So like we had that connection and we knew people out here. So someone I went to school with had got me an intro job, and then she worked at an agency and she ended up getting the agent there to read my stuff. And I just think almost everyone, unless you're like grew up in the industry, which most of us don't, we all probably come out here with that same feeling of like, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know who to call. There's no pathway forward. And you feel lost. And then, but you keep doing enough stuff. And I like to think eventually someone opens the door. I guess I would know. I got through the door somehow. Maybe sometimes no one opens the door, but it worked out.
The big takeaway here is go to Northwestern. I think that's
what Northwestern. I think that's.
No, but I think Justin, I know you probably have more questions to ask, but I do think that so much of it is sort of what Justin alluded to, which is just this kind of, you do have to have sort of blind optimism to a certain degree, and you have to just keep looking for, everybody says like a million people say no to you, one will say yes. You have to think, oh my God, the yes is still louder than all of the rest of the no's. But then the other piece of it, which is just true and real, and it's probably schoolmarm of me to say, but it's just do it all as well as you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't phone it in. Don't be late. Don't make promises you can't keep. Turn in your shit when you say you're going to do it. It's some of that stuff is sad, but there's so much attrition in acting and performing and writing. There's so many people that give up that there's a percentage that's just like, if you can survive the storm on the other side, there's more meat.
Forgive me if I'm answering for you, but Ana, I remember seeing you at the Groundlings, way back when I first.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and I think people assume that once you get in there, you've made it. Like that's the pathway to being seen and getting on Saturday Night Live. How true is that, or how And by the way, just getting into the Groundlings is not easy.
Definitely it is a journey getting up to the performing levels at the Groundlings, but a really effective one, I think, and a nice little sort of rehearsal for the larger rejections and acceptances of the industry, and everything we're talking about. It's a little microcosm. I mean, I picked the Groundlings because I knew it was a showcase, and I wanted to make. I remember being really grateful by that I had made up so many shows and done them at like 11:30, at what now is the UCB on, whatever that is, the corner of Scientology and Gower. What is that right there? You know what I'm talking about? On Franklin there. Like we did a million shows, but like nobody would come because they would be at 11:45 at night. Like that would be the theater time that we could get for $4.50 or whatever, the cost of the lighting booth guy was. So I was excited to have a venue that like agents had heard of and would start at 7, that on Friday. So it was kind of nice to like have that. But I forgot what your question was. I loved the Groundlings. Kathy Griffin told me to do the Groundlings.
Really?
I was at an audition early on out of Northwestern. It was like an open call improv thing. I had been an improviser. I don't know how it was, but we ended up spending the whole day together with like a mix, it was like a mix and match kind of situation. And she literally, she's very bossy by her own admission, and got mad. I was kind of snooty. I didn't really know if I wanted to do the Groundlings. She's like, "What are you talking about? Do the Groundlings. Everything will happen if you do the Groundlings. You'll meet a million performers. It'll be really fun." And so I did. I went and I auditioned and started doing the Groundlings. And and then she came to my showcase, and I wasn't wearing enough wigs and glasses because again, I thought I was cool. And she was like, "What's the Groundlings? What are you doing? Wear wigs, wear glasses." I was like, "Oh, okay, got it." And then I gave over, and then it was, and it was everything. It was community, and that's actually the first thing that it really first and foremost was for me. When I was taking classes, I had friends and colleagues in the business right away. I had a Christmas party to go to. Do you know what I mean? I knew people that weren't just like the 4 people I had gone to college with. And it just created its own immediate, there was fellowship and writing and fun and people pitching stuff and people doing stuff and all at different levels. And it was great training. It was great comedy writing and performing training. So
to this day, does Kathy Griffin get 10% of everything?
She wishes. I am so rich. No, Kathy Griffin is much richer than I am. I know this.
So you're currently working together on American Auto, which is such a smart and funny show. Justin, you've kind of become an expert on workplace comedies, having worked on The Office and created Superstore. Where did the idea for American Auto first sort of come from? What was the initial spark, and how do you go about, developing that into an idea and pitching that idea to a network who says yes?
I originally pitched it back in 2013. I just left The Office. And I just wanted to do a show set in the corporate world. So many times at The Office, they would be like, "Well, these orders come in from corporate, and what can we do?" And we just got to do it. And I think now and then, like, what is that world of corporate like? What's the world of the C-suite and the CEO? And sometimes it is nice in a comedy to be able to be like, "Well, we're doing this because we have to." So I knew there's a certain challenge in like the decision makers, but I thought that's also an opportunity. And the auto industry part of it came next. I mean, I wanted it to be just a giant American multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation. And I thought of pharmaceuticals, and I thought of the auto industry seemed like the 2 most promising. And, auto industry has a certain like kind of Americana thing about it. It feels like you define America a little bit by the auto industry, maybe the railroads and oil historically. And I knew also I didn't want to do tech because that felt like too like just of the moment. With Silicon Valley hadn't come out yet, but it just felt like it was too in the ether or something. And I didn't want it to be about the auto industry. I just wanted it to be about the corporate world. So I did it. It didn't go back then. And then I thought, well, what's the other end of things? What's the low end of thing? The other end of the hierarchy. And I thought working class store, and then I did Superstore. I used a lot of the same characters from the original American Auto pilot in Superstore. And then years later, Superstore had some success, and I had another opportunity and had to go back and create a whole bunch more stuff because I just robbed the American Auto and put it all in Superstore. And the world had changed, the industry had changed, and here we are.
I mean, I'm a big believer in things happening when they happen for a reason. Are you glad that, you're doing the show now and not in 2013?
I am. I don't believe things happen for a reason. I believe in chaos and randomness, but I do think looking back, I'm happy it happened this way. Yeah, no, I think it was, spending these last few years about doing a show about people getting sort of like really kicked around by corporate, not like in Dunder Mifflin, but the world of Cloud9, it seems even more fun. And I feel like it's more fun to take on the challenge of what are the people on the other side of things, and think like, these are the people that we've been treating as the antagonists for so long on Superstore, but they're not. Most people are not evil. People have a reason. People operate out of their own self-interest, but there's a reason they do things. Things aren't black and white. There's always a value judgment. There's always some reason you choose A over B. So I think the show would have been a very different show had it been the original one I pitched back then. Also, the auto industry has obviously changed, and that's different in different ways. I mean, electric and self-driving, and just it seems like it feels, if ever, more topical now than it was.
And I also, if I can just, it's not my question to answer, but I also just think that American appetite for the cultural appetite for corporate cynicism is high. I mean, I think people are kind of I think this season, it ended up being a very timely accident. I mean, timely piece of chaos for you, Justin, because I feel like all the conversations about race, culture, altruism, corporate greed, like they're all in a really specific moment post-pandemic. I mean, they're always all in a specific moment, but right now, I think, Succession kind of started to chip away at it, and now it's kind of nice. People want to laugh about some of this stuff, I think.
Yeah.
I also think we're a little more aware of pharmaceutical companies, if that makes sense, because Ana, you play Catherine Hastings, a pharmaceutical CEO who becomes the CEO of Payne Motors.
Correct.
And I don't know that I would have known what that even meant 10 years ago.
Yeah, I definitely think that, what's the word I'm looking for? They're sort of buzzwords. Those are buzzwords. We immediately know if you're coming from pharma that you're slightly ethically unsure of yourself. And likewise with big American, I keep thinking every time Justin so eloquently describes the American industry of the car world, of American automotive, the history, it's also, it's a foundering and floundering moment. Like we're trying to find ourselves in an international landscape again in the automotive industry. And we're hoping that our electronic vehicles skyrocket out of that. But, it's a nice little microcosm to show insecurity, American insecurity.
So how did the project find its way to you? I don't know if it was the Northwestern connection. I'd like to believe it was.
No, it wasn't. Or maybe it was. I don't know. Justin would have to answer that.
Yeah, every year I go through the Wildcats alumni catalog and say, who do I want to cast this year?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Cloris Leachman is gone. Yes, the very most boring way, which was that my agent called me and said, there's a script, you should read it. And I read it and I spoke to Justin it was like an immediate yes. But it was a sharper, fun. And you read a lot of pilots during pilot season and there are a lot of turds. So this was a delightful non-turd. And it made me laugh out loud, which is always an incredible litmus test. And the part was, again, I mean, to your point about time changing and time being on the side of the pilot happening when it did, it felt like a very of the moment casting choice to make it a woman and to have a woman who needed to be, I was very familiar with the concept of needing to be confident, but not being entirely confident in the role, so. And
when I wrote this version of it, the original old version, I think it was a male CEO, and it really didn't matter to me. It was never a show about a female CEO. And it wasn't even a show about a female car CEO because Mary Barra had already been at GM.
Yeah.
So. It was sort of, you got to make a decision when you write it, and I could have gone either way. And I kept wanting to be open. And when we were starting to cast it, I even was thinking well, are there any men I want to think about? I was just trying to be as open as possible. Mm-hmm. And we were going down different names, and we considered a couple people. And then I still even remember where I was, and our casting director was listing people who were available, and he got to your name. And I think at the time I was like, wait a minute. And I think maybe I thought you were on People of Earth still. I was sure you were unavailable. And I remember as he was going, I was like, wait, she's available? And I was like, stop, go, call right now. Because I just didn't know. And then, That's,
oh, wow. That's exciting to hear. I'm going to think about that. Yes, that's delightful. But yeah, no, I mean, I think I was thrilled. I mean, as much as I know that it could have been played by a million people apart, like I was uniquely excited that it was a female in that powerful position, because Justin's emphatic that Catherine is intelligent, but and I think she probably does have an MBA. I mean, I know she does, and I know that she's seasoned and has some expertise. But I also think that she's, ethically unsure of herself, or ethically compromised. Happy to.
I think
she loves money.
She's political and a little opportunistic, but I don't think more immoral than a lot of people that get that job. It takes a little bit of opportunism to rise to the rank, through the ranks like that.
Yeah, but it's fun to play a woman in. I mean, I'm her same age, so I know what it feels like to be one of a very few women in a workplace, and I know what it feels like to have kind of carried the wave and been through part of the transition to where now it's very common for women to be in positions of power in the workplace. But to a woman who came from, when I started Saturday Night Live, there were 6 women in that workplace, period. And by now it's like, so I know that it feels new to someone like Catherine to a degree. And she has a sense of responsibility about it, which is fun to play because you have to kind of project confidence that you don't always have. And, it's fun.
I think one thing we find that's both a challenge, but also kind of a fun thing is sort of the challenge of women aren't a minority, but the phrase like the model minority, it's like Catherine is a central character. She needs to be a comic character. You don't want to be like, oh, it's a female CEO and
right.
She's got to be perfect in every way because we need to make her this ideal dream for people to look up to. And it's like she makes dumb mistakes sometimes, and she can, do things that are far from perfect. And otherwise it'd be a character that just was not fun to watch.
Yeah. Justin, something else this show has in common with the 2 shows I previously named is you have a fantastic ensemble. In addition to Ana, you have actors like Harriet Dyer and Kai White. Where did you even start in rounding out this ensemble?
A lot of it really is just, we have a great casting directors who bring us great people, and I work with them on Superstore, and they sort of know what I'm looking for. People who are really funny, ideally people with an improv background. You try to be, you can never be totally open, but I think it drives them a little crazy because for every role, I'm like, any race, any age, any gender, unless there's a very specific reason it needs to be that. And even in our pilot episode, which is the character Jack, who's Black, and he gets hit by a self-driving car that can't see him on the road because of his skin color, and the AI doesn't take that into account. I remember being like, but look, if we find a great, white actor for that, then we'll figure out a way that it works a different way. Like, I just wanted to be open because I just want the best people. And so that's a big part of it. I mean, of our cast, I'm looking at my little cheat sheet just to think of it. I knew John Barinholtz from Superstore, and he talked to me early on, right when it got picked up, and I wasn't thinking about anyone who read the role. He's actually kind of a different type. I mean, he has a little more of a kind of fun, almost like fratty energy, and the type was, I think, I don't know how you describe it, but he wasn't the type I was thinking about. But I know he's just a dream to work with, and he's so funny, and I felt we can make that role fit you. And Humphrey, who plays Elliot, I cast him straight from England in the first pilot I ever did that didn't go years and years ago. So I knew him, and everyone else was a surprise I sort of met along the way.
I mean, because we have so many actors watching, I would love to know if either of you have any sort of advice for the audition room, like Justin, things that you're looking for, things that you're not looking for, or you would want actors to know. Ana, things that have worked for you, or maybe not. We can always learn from the bad as well.
Yeah, I actually am curious to hear Justin's point of view on that.
Right, people have asked me that sometimes, and I'll say something, and then I'll think, no, I can think of an exception where that's not the case. So it's people say should I improvise in an audition? And I've seen people improvise where it's like, dude, you got a script right there. I worked really hard on it. Let me hear it. But then other people who are great improvisers have come in and I'm like, oh my God, you just elevated it so much too. So, it's probably safer to, on a first pass, stick a little closer to the script, but if you're great, you're great. The one thing I'll always tell actors who ask that, which isn't advice as much as just something to make them feel better, is so much of it is out of your control in the end. And I've had actors who come in and it's like, that person is fantastic and I can't wait to one day write a role for them, but just doesn't work. for this role, or doesn't work because we have someone else we've already cast of the same type. So that's the one thing I feel sure about is, don't feel bad about yourself when a role doesn't work out, because there's a million reasons why it didn't work out. It could be that you're terrible. I don't know that.
Yeah. I always think of it as paying deposits, because I think that it really is back to my corny, like, positive signpost, Wiener Schnitzel, mission statement. It's early in my career, especially, but even to this day, if you go in and do a bang up audition and you do the best thing you can do, and you leave all your cards on the table, and you learned your lines well, and you committed, and you showed the showrunner that you're not phoning it in or cooler than they are or whatever it is, it almost 100% of the time has come back in my career to benefit me. That person will call me again. When the very first, at the Groundlings, Mark Hirschfeld, who used to do casting for NBC, my very first television thing, he came, he saw me at the Groundlings. I went, I did 2 or 3 auditions. I stunk up the room, or, I did a good job, but I actually didn't stink up the room. I went in but I didn't get the part. So in my mind, I stunk up the room, but then I knew the auditions had gone well enough. And then I got Seinfeld, which was my first TV credit. And again, just because I had kind of put in the investment with him. And I think about that all the time. And I say it to my kids, not about acting, but about other things, my basketball or whatever. But like, anytime I've thrown myself into it and gotten out of my own way and given the best that I can, because a friend of mine who's an actor, we often laugh. It's embarrassing acting. It's, you're wearing a banana suit on the subway a lot of times, and you're showing up and committing, and it's embarrassing. But if you can do it, and leave it all there, you can go home with your dignity, and it usually pays off with more than that.
Yeah, I've often heard that, you're not just auditioning for one role, you're auditioning for so much down the line. And just in hearing you say you've, cast people that you previously saw or worked with is really encouraging.
Yeah. And you're doing it for your agents. You're doing it for the people that are believing in you, that when you don't believe in you, you're putting yourself on the line for them, and so that they see how hard you try and they keep calling,
Because the chemistry of this cast is so good, I'm curious if you did any chemistry reads with people, or you just cast the best people and knew it would work.
Or hoped it would work. Yeah, I don't. I always like the idea of chemistry reads, but I'm trying to. I don't think we did not have like Harry and Ty get together or anything. So no, I don't know. Did you guys all meet each other? When did you all meet each other for the first time?
We met each other during the. Well, it was an odd sequence of events, of course, like everything has been in the last 2 years because of COVID.
Yeah.
So we were about to go to our first table read when we were shut down. The whole world shut down. It was like the day before the shutdown. I was in Los Angeles, had a fitting actually for American Auto, and then flew home. And we all thought, oh, well, that's that. There goes our fun little pilot that we all thought we were going to do. And then we did it the following October, which was last 2 Octobers ago. So I think in some respects, the gratitude of working during COVID, I think we were all sort of just delighted to have a job and to be doing something, because we'd all been coming out of the shutdown. And then it took a little longer because of COVID, because of all the protocols and what have you. And this was pre-vaccination. So it was, fussy. But it ended up being, I think, very bonding because of that. I think we were kind of, it was kind of like being on Mars. We were sort of like doing a show in a, Tyvek suit. And then almost another 9 months passed before we started shooting again, because we got picked up in July, but we didn't, I don't remember. We got picked up in January actually, and then we didn't start shooting until July. So again, it was just sort of a long, drawn out, really kind of healthily slow process by which we got to know one another. And I think it helped a lot, actually. And again, there's so many ensemble scenes in this show, which require real connection and listening. And it's kind of a crash course in intimacy in a strange way, because you have to just get good at that quickly.
I don't know how it is with like streaming and cable and shows where you might have more time, but when you're on a network development schedule, putting aside for the fact that we ended up shutting down for a while, but just in the initial process before we knew about COVID, it's like everything is going. You have a script, you have a pickup, you're crewing up, you're casting. You don't really have the luxury to like be like, well, we like 3 people for each part. Let's get them all together and have them play off each other. Maybe some people do, but every time I've cast a network pilot, you're always up against the clock and you're like, okay, we're shooting now. We got to find someone quick for every role. You know?
Yeah.
Once you do work with the actors and get to know them and you're a few episodes in, do you find yourself starting to write for them, for their strengths?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we're still probably figuring it out a little in American Auto probably because of COVID, and I'd written another script already, and we did a lot of the writing before a lot of the filming, and we were still doing a little bit. So we didn't even, for this first season, have that many episodes that we were like starting to think about after we'd already seen cuts of earlier episodes. You know, by the time I was able to show a cut of episode 2 to the writers, we're just about done writing everything. So I think we're already starting to do that, and we'll do more of that. But you know, I know on Superstore, absolutely the part becomes the actor over time. Because you know, you come up with a part, you try to be specific, you try to think of little fun idiosyncrasies, but in the end, everything's always a little bland and generic, more so than you want, you know, because it's almost like when you write a character, you can describe that character in words, but once that an actor inhabits that character, they just become it. And it's like, you couldn't describe that person. It's just like, it's Ana. It's everything she brings to it, you know?
And I'm curious, is there room for improvisation? I know you probably have, you know, very specific scripts, but at the same time, you have a really funny cast. Yeah,
I mean, the more time there is, the better. I mean, I think also with COVID, we probably had a little less time because everything took a little more time, but I always want to do fun runs. We have such amazing improvisers. I mean, I was only on set sometimes on, and maybe you can speak more to what your other experiences were when I wasn't there.
Justin is such a fascinating a duality in Justin, because honestly, his scripts are the tightest I've ever worked on. I mean, there is not a wasted word. They're 21 minutes, they're concept driven, they have 1 million cast members, it's a huge workplace. As you know, they're like, the ideas are really big in American Auto. They're conversation pieces each episode. And they're like little, and I mean this in the highest compliment, they're Rubik's cubes. They're not traditionally boring, like A story, B story, C story. You know, you really, not that those are boring always, but it doesn't have a conventional, feels like a Rubik's cube. You start with A and you move around and then you end up with A resolving, and they're complicated and interesting. So the duality is that he absolutely is the most generous showrunner about improvisation that I've ever worked with. He doesn't care if you have fun with it. He's like, great. It's clear he spent a lot of time in a writer's room. He's like, best joke wins, great. But at the same time, you really don't want to mess with it too much because there's so much that needs to happen in the writing. There's just a lot of information that needs to get relayed and some really strong jokes along the way. So it's fun to improvise when we can do it, and he's really generous about it. And I'm not just saying that because we're on the same Zoom. He really is. I've had, but we don't need to. We don't need to.
I would think one of the hardest things about working with this cast is not breaking. Do you find yourself probably a pro at that?
Yeah, I take it super seriously, not breaking. It's so obnoxious. I'm always worried. Like I worry about everything else. I'm worried like that we're out of time or it's getting expensive, or, you know, I just get nervous about that. And same with SNL. Like I tried really, really hard not to ever break on it. Because I like the storytelling, and I didn't want to like ruin it with me being an obnoxious actor laughing. That said, we do break because we can call cut.
But I think there was less, like there was more breaking when I think of Superstore. Like there were not that many takes I can think of where like, well, we can't use that because of breaking on this.
No, it's more brain farts for me because I have so much dialogue.
Yeah, she is a talker. She has to get her around some big phrases too.
It's a lot. Yeah, I love it, but it took some getting used to.
Now, I don't know if you can tell us what's next, what you have planned, anything you want to tease. It's such a great show. I look forward to seeing what you do next. Is there anything you can tell us?
I mean, we don't even know. We don't have a second season yet. So maybe there'll be a show. I don't know. I hope.
Maybe some merch.
Yeah. I don't know. So I mean, so no, we don't have a writer's room yet. Like we ended the season on this big cliffhanger of this sort of news magazine finding out that there was this little cover up. So I think it's obvious that we'll have to come back and answer that for next season. We have we talked vaguely about a couple stories that could come out of that last year, and I have a handful of stories that I would be a little excited about, but they're also they're so in their infancy. It wouldn't even be, even if I pitched them, they wouldn't seem like anything. But I think the episode that people will have just watched, our commercial episode, which was, a little political and dealing with some issues or social. I don't imagine every episode will be that, but there were a few other kind of topics that felt like they might be something that would be discussed in this world. And I think we were able to successfully execute that. And we had a lot of support from the network and studio, and they were happy with how it turned out. So it gives me confidence that we can do a couple more like that in a season 2.
Well, I'm excited. It's such a fantastic show. I want to thank you both so much for being here. And on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, thank you for sharing your experiences and process and craft with your fellow performers.
Thank you so much. I could listen to you talk all day. I feel like
You mean Justin?
No, Jenelle, I love your voice. You have a beautiful, like, I feel like you should take over Fresh Air.
I mean, that is the dream.
Right?
Yeah,
Make
no,
an
I would
addition.
love that. But I've been told I have an annoying voice, so I appreciate that.
Oh my God,
that is sweaty balls lady telling you that. So that's high praise.
It's true. It's true.
Coming from the top. Well, I so appreciate it. Seriously, it means the world. It's such a fantastic show. I don't think you have to worry about a season 2, but what do I know?
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was nice being here.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.